it to the Chicago Teachers Union. They are going hard. School has been canceled for Chicago students for 10 straight days as teachers continue their strike for smaller class sizes and more teaching staff. There's a possibility that the Teachers Union in Chicago Public Schools could come to an agreement on the morning of October 30th, but that's not set in stone. Mayor Lori Lightfoot said, "What's prolonging the strike is the union's insistence on a shorter school day or school year and their insistence that I agree to support their political agenda." This is an overblown statement considering the fact that the union is actually holding out for paid teacher prep time that could be counted as teachers' work days. And don't teachers constantly need to evolve and learn to be competent instructors? Parents and students are inevitably feeling the pressure of so many missed school days, and Lightfoot is trying to turn support of the strike by mentioning that the students are being deprived of opportunities like football games. Maybe it's the adult in me, but I personally feel like teachers being more competent and well paid for their jobs, along with better classroom sizes, is more important than watching redundant sports events. Meanwhile, last Friday on October 25th, 57% of the 48,000 United Auto workers participating in the GM strike approved a deal with the company. They didn't work for 40 days, and the strike cost GM up to $4 billion. GM also had to lay off over 12,000 non-striking workers at a few of their operations in Canada and Mexico. But the fortunate United Auto worker employees won annual lump sum bonuses or raises, and GM won't be closing 4 of their U.S. facilities. GM will also be investing $7.7 billion in current facilities, adding thousands of new jobs, and will shorten the time period required for employees to work before they earn the top pay of more than $32 an hour. Most of my generation has taken nude pictures of themselves, and we should not be vilified for it. I'm not just saying that because I have an OnlyFans. Look, this stance is the kind of idea that sends misogynists and conservatives into a tizzy, as they declare that women who dare to be nude on camera deserve the consequence of losers leaking them to the internet. And this mentality has persisted behind regular women, business women, and celebrity women. But now it's in politics. On October 27th, the Democratic Congresswoman who won a traditionally red LA district in the 2008 midterms announced her resignation. It began with allegations on a conservative news site that she and her husband, who she's in the middle of a messy divorce with, were in a throuple with the female campaign aide. This led to the House Ethics Committee opening an investigation because of a rule passed last year that prohibits members of Congress and staff members from being in sexual relationships. Hill's husband also accused her of cheating with another man, and the conservative site posted nudes of her that she claims were posted by, quote, "an abusive husband who seems determined to try to humiliate me." Keep in mind that revenge porn is illegal in California. While I definitely believe Hill should face the consequences of messing around with a staffer, and speaking of this whole throuple thing, this reminded me of The Politician on Netflix, which is so good. But she doesn't deserve to have her nudes leaked. No woman does. She posted a video vowing to fight revenge porn, and I think this whole situation speaks to how revenge porn will impact future politicians. Like I said, most people in my generation have taken nude photos, and this will be something that comes up for those who decide to enter politics as boomers get phased out. The problem is our intense taboo on nudity that makes the nude photos of an otherwise uninteresting person, celebrity, or politician scandalous. We all get naked for showers, we all have butt holes, and we all have a lot of the other same body parts. If nudity wasn't taboo, there would be no way to embarrass people because of their nude photos. But our country, full of state-sanctioned violence and cruelty, ain't ready to destigmatize nudity anytime soon. With the advancement of deepfake and hacking technologies, this will only make cases like Katie Hill's more common. 54-year-old Philadelphia Police Chief Inspector Carl Holmes was hit with 11 charges, including some for assault, and suspended from his job. Why? Between 2004 and 2007, he was accused by 3 female officers of rape. This comes 2 months after Police Commissioner Richard Ross resigned because of his constant neglect of police misconduct. Carl Holmes would offer to mentor his victims and ended up taking advantage of them. The 3 women were investigated by the Internal Affairs Department after they reported him, and all 3 ended up leaving the force. One woman successfully sued and settled out of court. One of Holmes' victims was raped after she came to him for help dealing with sexual harassment by another male supervisor. Holmes told her not to tell anyone, saying he could make her disappear. The victim went on to complain just about the sexual harassment, believing nobody would believe both things happened to her. A few weeks after she came forward, an anonymous letter to IAD accused her of being involved with drug dealers, and she was investigated for 3 years before being cleared. She testified in court that she didn't originally report Holmes because, quote, in our culture, you just don't tell on cops at all, even if they're wrong. In other indictment news, the 21-year-old woman, In Young Yu, who abused her boyfriend Alexander Urtula and sent him messages telling him to kill himself, has been charged with involuntary manslaughter. In the 2 months before he threw himself from a parking garage, they exchanged over 75,000 texts, and she sent him hundreds of suicide taunts. In Young is currently in her native South Korea, and prosecutors have plans to extradite her if she doesn't return voluntarily. 5 years ago, tuberculosis passed AIDS as the world's deadliest infectious disease, claiming roughly 1.6 million lives a year. And about 10 million people get TB a year because the spread of the disease is exacerbated by crowded conditions and can be transmitted via cough. Fortunately, scientists at the World Health Organization reported that an experimental vaccine protected nearly half of the people who received a dose in a 3,300-person study involving adults in Kenya, South Africa, and Zambia. A hardier vaccine would be over 90% effective, but scientists are optimistic that this one can save millions more lives as is, and can be tweaked to be more effective. Experts want to test the vaccine on more varied populations, like on people with HIV, who are more susceptible to catching tuberculosis. Speaking of HIV, it's been reported that in a small Pakistani city, Ratadero, roughly 1,100 citizens have been diagnosed with HIV since the beginning of the year, 900 of them under 12 years old. Officials think the rate is probably higher because only a small chunk of the population, less than a quarter, has been tested. And they initially blamed the HIV outbreak on a local cheap pediatrician who reused needles. But now those officials believe he wasn't the only doctor reusing needles, and that barbers and dentists also use unsterilized equipment. Ratadero is an overwhelmingly poor city, and Pakistan itself spends little on HIV education and treatment, instead depending on other countries to provide aid. What is happening in Ratadero actually reflects a larger problem across Pakistan of ignorance and poor medical practices. From 2000 to 2018, the number of HIV-positive people in Pakistan has nearly doubled to 160,000. First of all, a state court has finally called North Carolina Republicans on their bullshit, denying them the ability to use a congressional district map they gerrymandered into benefiting them. Remember how back in June that the Supreme Court ruled that it couldn't regulate partisan gerrymandering no matter how corrupt it was? Stanton Johns, a lawyer for the Democrats who sued, said, North Carolina Republicans tried to beat democracy with their gerrymandered maps, and the U.S. Supreme Court would have let them get away with it. The map was drawn by Republican legislators in 2016 and guaranteed their control of 10 of the 13 House districts, even though voters' political preferences in those areas were split evenly between Republicans and Democrats. They won't be able to use the map during primary elections in spring 2020, but this doesn't erase nearly 10 years of gerrymandered maps that have swayed North Carolina elections to benefit Republicans and neglect other voters, particularly black ones. Judges are prepared to postpone spring primary elections if they need additional time to redraw new House districts. In other court news, the ruthlessly misogynistic Alabama abortion ban was temporarily blocked by a federal judge, thanks to a legal challenge from Planned Parenthood and the ACLU. The abortion law, which wouldn't have allowed abortions once a heartbeat is detected, even in the case of rape or incest, would have went into effect on November 15th. Pro-lifers are pleased because they're one step closer to attempting to have Roe v. Wade repealed in the highest court. Alabama State Attorney General Steve Marshall said, as we have stated before, the state's objective is to advance our case to the U.S. Supreme Court. The battle over women's reproductive rights isn't over.